The discovery is completely unique. We have terracotta servants who could serve him.
They also find the head of the terracotta warriors. And the archaeological team came to this area and they start to dig.
For over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army has stood guard over Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, a man who dreamed of ruling even in death. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was obsessed with uncovering lost wisdom, driven by an unshakable desire to make himself divine. But in 2025, when advanced AI technology finally scanned his vast, silent army of clay soldiers, what it revealed left historians around the world astonished. Beneath the surface were secrets that could completely change our understanding of his rule, his reach for power, and his vision of eternal life. This story begins long before that, back in the early spring of 1974. The farmlands outside Xi'an in northern China were dry and cracked from drought when a group of farmers made a discovery that would rewrite history: the buried army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. The emperor who united China for the first time in history had once conquered 6 powerful kingdoms. Centuries later, his greatest secret would be uncovered by chance. In the spring of 1974, a few villagers from Xi'an decided to dig a new well, hoping to find water during a drought. Among them was a farmer named Yang Jifa. As he worked through the pale, dry soil, his shovel suddenly struck something solid about 15 feet down. At first, he thought it was just an old tile or a piece of pottery. But when he lifted it out, a life-size clay head rolled into the sunlight. Moments later, they uncovered more pieces: a torso, broken armor, and bronze arrowheads glinting in the dust. None of them could have imagined that they had just broken into the roof of one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history, a vast underground army that had lain untouched for more than 2,000 years. The farmers placed the fragments by the side of the field, and some even tried to sell a few arrowheads for pocket change. The story might have ended there if not for Jiao Kongman, a local cultural officer who heard whispers about strange statues near the well. Curious, he drove out to see for himself. The moment he laid eyes on the clay figures, he knew they were extraordinary. Jiao quickly began gathering every fragment he could find and alerted the Shanxi Provincial Archaeological Institute. Within months, excavation teams arrived, and what they uncovered was beyond imagination. The scale of the discovery was so immense that China decided to build an entire museum complex above the excavation site. Today, that museum stands as a protective shelter over one of the most breathtaking World Heritage sites on Earth, the silent army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. When the first pit was finally cleared enough to see inside, it looked like a battlefield frozen in time. Row after row of life-sized clay soldiers stood in perfect formation, heads raised, armor carved with astonishing precision, as if still waiting for a command that would never come. They all faced east, toward the lands once ruled by the rival kingdoms that China's first emperor had conquered in the 3rd century BC. Behind them stood clay horses, once harnessed to wooden war chariots. The wood had long since decayed, but the ruts carved into the earth still showed where the wheels had once rested. The sheer scale of the site was beyond belief. Experts now estimate that there are more than 8,000 soldiers, over 100 chariots, and hundreds of horses buried across several vast pits, though only a fraction has been fully excavated. The largest of these, known as Pit 1, stretches about 755 feet in length and just over 200 feet in width, covering more than 3.5 acres, roughly the size of 2 football fields. The soldiers stand on a floor set 16 feet below the original ground surface. Pit 1 alone is like an enormous underground hall divided by thick earthen walls into long aisles. Archaeologists have identified 11 parallel corridors running east to west. The ceilings were once supported by heavy wooden beams, covered with reed mats and layers of packed clay to protect them from water. In its original form, the pit would have looked like a vast, covered staging ground, ready for battle. At the eastern end stood the vanguard, the frontline warriors who would have led the charge. Behind them, rows of armored infantry held long weapons in formation. Along the edges and rear, other troops faced outward, protecting the flanks. Even after more than 2 millennia, the army still stands ready, locked in eternal silence beneath the earth. The Terracotta Army isn't just an artistic masterpiece, it's a military blueprint. The entire layout mirrors the organization of a real army preparing for battle. If Pit 1 represents raw power, then Pit 2 reveals the Emperor's military strategy. Located nearby, Pit 2 contains what experts call a combined arms formation, a carefully arranged mix of different types of troops designed to fight together. Excavators uncovered cavalry units with saddled horses, kneeling archers frozen mid-draw, and chariot teams positioned as if ready to charge into combat. Current estimates from Pit 2 include several hundred warriors, around 100 horses, and multiple chariots divided into sections, just like the wings of a real battlefield force. Remarkably, when some of the kneeling archers were first uncovered, faint traces of paint still clung to their armor and shoes, offering a glimpse of the vibrant colors the army once displayed. Pit 3, though much smaller, about 5,600 square feet, holds a different kind of significance. It contains only a few dozen figures and a single chariot drawn by 4 horses, arranged as though inside a command post. Scholars believe this was the army's headquarters, where high-ranking officers once directed the vast forces positioned in the larger pits. Pit 4, discovered later, was empty, an unfinished chamber suggesting that the grand project may have still been underway when it was finally sealed. Unlike the other pits, Pit 3 shows little fire damage, and much of its original pigment remains visible. Because of this exceptional preservation, it provides the most vivid picture of how the entire army once looked, fully painted, alive with color. Even after 50 years of excavation, new discoveries continue to emerge. In late 2024 and early 2025, archaeologists working in Pit 2 unearthed a remarkably detailed officer figure, a life-sized senior commander standing beside 2 chariots and several horses. His armor was decorated with intricate patterns, and his tall headdress signified his high rank. Chinese researchers noted that such elite figures are extremely rare. Only about 10 top-ranking commanders have been found since 1974. The craftsmanship behind these figures is as impressive as their scale. Each warrior stands between 5.5 and 6 feet tall and weighs several hundred pounds. Though hollow, they are incredibly strong. The legs were shaped as thick clay tubes, the torsos formed separately as large shells. The arms, hands, and heads were crafted individually and then carefully joined together while the clay was still damp. Every figure was unique, an army of thousands, each with its own face, expression, and story, standing silently in formation for more than 2 millennia. The artisans who built the Terracotta Army worked with extraordinary precision. After assembling each figure, they smoothed every seam, sculpted lifelike facial features, and pressed fine details into the clay surface. Nothing was overlooked. Fingernails, belt knots, even the stitching of armor plates were all carved by hand. Scientific analysis of the clay revealed that it wasn't just ordinary earth. Under the microscope, researchers identified a deliberate mix: local loess, a fine yellow silt found across northern China, combined with minerals like quartz and kaolin. The loess made the clay easy to mold and hard when dry, the quartz added strength, and the kaolin provided smoothness and flexibility. This blend was likely prepared in large workshops near the site, then distributed to teams of craftsmen who shaped and assembled the figures. What emerged wasn't the work of a single sculptor, but a massive state-run production effort, an early form of industrial organization. In the 3rd century BC. Evidence of this system still appears in the statues themselves. Certain elements, such as hands or heads, show repeated base patterns, suggesting the use of molds for standardized parts. But once a molded piece was made, artisans would hand-finish every detail, giving each warrior a unique identity. That's why, when you look across the army, no two soldiers are the same. Each has distinct jawlines, cheekbones, hairlines, and expressions. Some faces look calm and composed, others alert or stern. Noses vary from straight to crooked, and faint lines on lips resemble old scars, adding to their realism. To find out whether these differences were purely artistic or based on real people, researchers have turned to advanced 3D scanning and artificial intelligence. Using high-resolution scans, AI models analyze thousands of subtle facial measurements like the angle of an ear, the depth of a chin, or the fold of an eyelid, searching for hidden patterns. The results were astonishing. The variation in features was so detailed and consistent that it seemed unlikely the faces were entirely imagined. The leading theory now suggests that some of the higher-ranking warriors, especially officers, may have been modeled after real individuals who served under Emperor Qin Shi Huang himself. Even their armor and clothing designs appear to reflect differences in rank and military role, capturing not just an army, but the structure of an entire empire in clay. The Terracotta Army's attention to military realism goes far beyond faces and expressions. It extends to every detail of their uniforms, weapons, and posture. Senior officers are depicted wearing heavy, layered breastplates and tall, ornamented headgear that signal authority. Chariot drivers are modeled with protective caps and firm, balanced stances, suited for gripping the reins. Cavalrymen wear short, fitted jackets for ease of movement while riding, and kneeling archers are equipped with lighter armor, giving them flexibility to twist and fire. Every figure's pose and attire perfectly match its real-life role in battle. The gray and brown tones we see today are only what's left after more than 2 millennia of decay. When the first warriors were unearthed in the 1970s, they were vividly painted, bursting with color. Excavators reported seeing deep reds made from cinnabar, bright blues and purples from copper minerals, soft pinks on the cheeks, black hairlines, and even painted patterns along the laces of their armor. Among the pigments identified was a rare compound known as Chinese purple or Han purple, a synthetic barium-copper silicate. It was one of the earliest man-made purple pigments in human history, a remarkable example of ancient chemical engineering. These pigments were applied over a thin layer of lacquer, a glossy resin extracted from the Asian lacquer tree. Once dried, the lacquer formed a glass-like, waterproof surface, perfect for holding bright paint. But what preserved the color in antiquity became a problem in modern times. When the figures were exposed to air during excavation, the ancient lacquer dried too quickly and began to contract. Within seconds, the brilliant colors started flaking off. Archaeologists watched in dismay as centuries of color vanished before their eyes, sometimes in less than 15 seconds. Within minutes, entire painted surfaces would crumble away. To stop the loss, researchers halted excavations and began developing special chemical treatments to stabilize the paint as soon as it was exposed. Today, conservators apply these solutions immediately when new fragments are uncovered, ensuring that the last traces of color survive. The weapons found with the warriors complete the image of a fully equipped army. These weren't mere decorations. The soldiers once held real, functional arms. Archaeologists have uncovered over 40,000 bronze weapons, including swords, long spears, lances, halberds, dagger axes, crossbow triggers, and thousands of arrowheads. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, was the finest material of its time, known for its strength and durability. Among the most impressive weapons was the halberd, a pole arm with a curved blade that allowed soldiers to stab or hook enemies from a distance. Together, the lifelike figures and authentic weaponry reveal a staggering vision, an emperor who built not a tomb, but an eternal army ready to march with him into the afterlife. Archaeologists discovered that the terracotta warriors were not alone in their underground world, and the details they uncovered tell an extraordinary story of precision, power, and ambition. Among the artifacts, they found bundles of bronze arrowheads, carefully packed in groups of about 100. Chemical tests revealed that each bundle was made from the same metal mix within itself, but slightly different from the bundle beside it, suggesting organized production by multiple specialized workshops. Beyond the main army chambers, researchers mapped an entire network of related pits spread across the surrounding farmland. Over hundreds of excavations, they uncovered bronze chariots buried with real horses, pits filled with suits of stone armor, and clay figures of attendants, officials, and guards. One chamber even portrayed entertainers, acrobats, dancers, and strongmen captured in motion. Another recreated a peaceful garden scene, complete with bronze ducks, cranes, and swans arranged around what was once a flowing stream, accompanied by musicians. These discoveries revealed that the site wasn't designed as just a military display. It was a complete recreation of the emperor's world, an eternal empire underground, populated with soldiers, servants, animals, and performers. But this raises a haunting question. If this is the army, who or what are they guarding? The answer lies beneath a massive earthen mound at the center of the entire complex, a structure that may be the most dangerous tomb ever built. From a distance, it looks like a quiet green hill, but beneath it rests the forbidden tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. The mound itself rises nearly 250 feet, about the height of a 20-story building, and conceals a vast underground palace. Its base stretches hundreds of feet in every direction, forming a wide, flat-topped pyramid surrounded by remnants of ancient walls and gates. According to ancient records, construction began when Qin Shi Huang was still a teenager and continued for nearly 40 years, from around 246 BC to 208 BC. Historical texts claim that as many as 700,000 people, laborers, craftsmen, and prisoners were forced to dig, haul, and build the immense complex, sealing the emperor's tomb from the living world. Excavations near the western edge of the mausoleum have uncovered mass graves believed to belong to those very workers. In one pit alone, archaeologists found over 100 skeletons, mostly young or middle-aged men, many between 15 and 40 years old. Their bones showed clear signs of brutal physical strain, evidence of the back-breaking labor required to build the emperor's final resting place. Studies of their skulls and DNA reveal that these workers came from across the empire, not just one region, drawn together by force to serve the vision of a ruler who sought to control not only China, but the afterlife itself. Studies of the workers' remains revealed something fascinating. They came from all across the empire. Some had northern features, others from the far south, and many showed traits not native to the Shanxi region at all. This diversity confirmed that Qin Shi Huang had drawn labor from every corner of his vast kingdom. Later legends tell a darker side of the story. They claim that once construction was complete, some workers, and even certain members of the emperor's palace, were executed or buried nearby to ensure that no one could reveal the secrets of what lay beneath the earth. Modern scans and surveys have since shown that the emperor's tomb is far more than a single burial chamber. It's an entire underground complex built like a city beneath the soil. Deep underground lies a walled compound surrounded by massive layers of earth and brick. Inside, archaeologists have detected an inner brick wall about 13 feet high, enclosing a rectangular space roughly 1,500 feet from north to south and 1,280 feet from east to west. Beyond that stands a second wall made of packed earth, up to 40 yards thick, forming a fortress-like shell around the inner compound. Sloping tunnels descend from each side toward the center, leading to the heart of the entire structure, the emperor's main burial chamber. That central chamber is immense, measuring about 260 feet long, 160 feet wide, and nearly 50 feet high. Its ceiling lies nearly 100 feet below today's surface. Archaeological surveys have even revealed drainage systems and what appear to be underground dams, evidence that the builders engineered the tomb to resist flooding. This wasn't just a grave, it was a fortress of eternity. What makes the site truly extraordinary is that the core chamber has never been opened. The actual resting place of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the chamber believed to hold his body and unimaginable treasures, remains sealed exactly as it was more than 2,000 years ago. Archaeologists have explored everything around it: chariot pits, horse burials, and ruins resembling palace foundations scattered near the mound. They've uncovered clay musicians, officials, and courtyards arranged like a miniature version of the emperor's royal capital, an afterlife replica of his empire above ground. But the doorway to the main chamber itself has never been breached. Everything we know about what lies inside comes from ancient records, ground-penetrating radar, and soil and air analysis. The earliest written description of the tomb comes from the historian Xi'an, writing in the 1st century BC, about 100 years after the emperor's death in 210 BC. According to his account, the underground palace was filled with full-scale buildings, palaces, and towers stocked with treasures beyond imagination, an eternal kingdom crafted for China's first emperor to rule in death as he did in life. According to ancient historian Xi'an, the interior of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's tomb was nothing less than a miniature version of his entire empire. He wrote that flowing rivers and vast seas were recreated using liquid mercury, while the ceiling above was painted with constellations, an imitation of the night sky, and the floor below mapped out the mountains and valleys of China. He even described intricate defenses inside the tomb, mechanical crossbows set to fire automatically at intruders, and lamps said to burn forever, fueled by the fat of a mysterious sea creature he called a manfish, which some believe may have been a whale. For centuries, scholars debated whether Xi'an's account was truth or legend. But modern science has begun to confirm many of his astonishing claims, and the most haunting evidence comes from the mercury. Mercury, a silvery liquid metal that remains fluid at room temperature, is highly toxic and releases poisonous vapors as it evaporates. When researchers began testing the soil around the burial mound, they were stunned to find mercury concentrations far beyond normal levels. Some samples showed as much as 1,400 parts per billion, dozens of times higher than typical soil in the region. Later surveys even found hot spots exceeding 2,100 parts per billion. To put that in perspective, ordinary soil in this part of China usually measures only a few dozen to a few hundred parts per billion. These extreme readings match Xi'an's ancient description almost perfectly. Scientists also used a high-tech laser system called differential absorption LiDAR to scan the air above the mound. The results showed mercury vapor levels around 27 nanograms per cubic meter, roughly 3 times higher than the regional average of 5 to 10. In other words, mercury is literally leaking from the tomb today, seeping upward through the ground despite the chamber remaining sealed for over 2 millennia. Modern pollution can't explain the mercury found around the first emperor's tomb. Surveys decades apart show the same patterns, and the highest levels match exactly where the main burial chamber is believed to be. Tests reveal the mercury came from ancient cinnabar mines under Qin control. Cinnabar, a red mineral made of mercury sulfide, was refined in large amounts during his reign. Researchers estimate over 100 metric tons of mercury may have been poured into the tomb, one of the largest concentrations ever recorded. In Qin Shi Huang's time, mercury wasn't a poison. It was seen as life itself. Obsessed with immortality, he likely filled his tomb with it to preserve his empire and soul forever. Ancient texts even describe rivers of mercury flowing through his underground palace. If that's true, the air inside would now be lethally toxic. One breath could be fatal. But mercury isn't the only danger. After being sealed for more than 2,000 years, the tomb's inner world has its own delicate balance of air and moisture. Breaking that seal could destroy its artifacts in seconds. Experts admit no technology today can safely open and preserve such a vast, sealed space. There are also the tomb's rumored traps. Records mention mechanical crossbows set to fire automatically at intruders. Scans have even detected dense metal clusters and narrow choke points, proof of defensive design. And beyond traps lies decay, rotting beams, unstable soil, and the constant threat of groundwater flooding the chamber if breached. To understand the mind that built such a tomb, you must know the man himself. In the 3rd century BC, China was torn by war. Amid the chaos rose a boy king, Yingzheng of Qin, who conquered all rival states and in 221 BC declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. He ruled every aspect of life, currency, language, laws, even thought itself. He imposed one code of law, one system of weights and measures, and one written script for the entire nation. Roads and highways radiated from his capital, binding the empire together. He ruled through legalism, strict laws, harsh punishments, and total obedience. To control minds as well as men, he ordered books burned and scholars executed, erasing histories that challenged his rule. He carved his victories into mountains and stone, proclaiming himself the ruler of all under heaven. His jade imperial seal declared heaven's mandate belonged to him, a symbol later dynasties would kill to possess. Yet even the man who united China couldn't conquer death. Consumed by the fear of dying, he sent alchemists to find the elixir of life. One of them, Shu Fu, sailed east with thousands in search of immortality and never returned. The emperor drank every potion offered to him, many laced with mercury. Ironically, it was this elixir of life that likely killed him at 49. His death was hidden, his chosen heir replaced, and within a few years, the Qin dynasty collapsed. From its founding to its fall, it lasted just 15 years. But his system endured. The Han dynasty and every dynasty after followed his blueprint: one emperor, one bureaucracy, one empire under heaven.